This documentary you're about to see is about a person named Ben Terry and his unique life with the leading up to his disassociation and abandonment from all the people in his life. Not only do we see the life of one individual, but we personally question what friendship is. We also internalized our feelings so we can question why we feel that way. Hopefully this documentary makes you examine yourself in a critical light.
A friend is someone you can rely on and trust.
You enjoy each other's company.
Someone who's loyal. There are many levels of friendship.
Someone who will be loyal to you even maybe when you don't deserve it or haven't been loyal to them.
I don't know, two people who care about each other in a non-romantic way.
A friend helps a friend.
Take them out for a fucking drink or two and you show them a good time. That's friendship to me.
Alright. So when did you first meet Ben, if you can remember?
I remember it really clearly, which is a surprising thing. My dad went to a job interview with his dad, actually. Ben's dad was my father's boss for a number of years because my dad was a computer repair guy. And what happened was they were going to meet at a local park and bring their kids and stuff like that because both parents at the time, and Ben, like I said before, he was, I think, grade 4 or 5, and I was a grade under him. And we had met that day, and we were just talking about whatever.
Well, his name is Barang, so that's the first thing. We went to a pretty white elementary school. He was like Iranian. I don't know. Is he Iranian? Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. So I must have been in about third grade, fourth grade, something like that. Really, really young. And yeah, one lunch. It was a normal lunch, and then rumors started spreading around the cafeteria or whatever that Ben drank a cup of gravy, and it was kind of weird, but everyone was kind of being weird about it, kind of being like, "Oh man, wow, Ben, you drank a cup of gravy," but I kind of respected him for it. I bet I could talk to any of my elementary school friends; they'd remember him.
Ben had shown signs of eccentric and erratic behavior, even from an earlier age. This possibly was who he was as a person.
He just seemed like he, kind of got picked on a lot. He had friends, but around the end of his elementary school, I thought he transferred away to a different school.
From Iran, they moved, I think they were living in France for a little while, or Lebanon, or Portugal, or something like that. He moved around a few times before he came to Canada, actually. So he's a child of the world to a certain extent, and maybe his weirdness is just because of the television he watched on a program 20 years ago that he doesn't even remember, but somehow instilled something from that program into his psyche. Formative years are really important, and he had interesting ones.
Ben's time had come to transition to high school. If he was ready for this transition, we do not know. Ben's first high school was Lord Byng Secondary. He looked like an average kid alongside others such as Nikita Kolpakov and Max Kendall. His full name was actually Behrang Kalantari Tarari.
The first time I actually saw and met Ben Terry was in gym class in grade 8 for McTavish's class.
I met him in grade 8 at Lord Byng. He was into hip hop then, and he had a bit more meat on him. And he always wore the same white hoodie. But he was fundamentally the same.
I think it was actually in science class, and that's how I first got to know you. You were in the same science class as me, and he just showed up one day, and I was wearing a hat, and he commented on the hat, and that's like the first words we spoke to one another, and he was just such a strange person.
The very first time I met Ben was in grade 8. We had a class together, but I wasn't really hanging out with him.
I saw him in the halls of high school because I was in grade 8 and they made a joke about him in the drama class, but I didn't actually know who he was, so I just knew him as the dandruff kid that, Justin Chartier made fun of? Or maybe it was Sebastian Montesi, one of the kids, but so I just knew him as the dandruff kid.
The first time that I met Ben Terry was in the Lord Byng parking lot. And I was with a group of my friends. And he kind of walked up laughing at us. And he just kind of said, was making these weird ravings to other people. Then he turned to me and he said, "Hey man, I know you." And I said, "No, I don't think I know." He's like, "Yeah, you're in my sewing class." And I'm like, "I am?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "I don't take sewing right now." "You're in my sewing class." And I was like, "All right." And the one thing I noticed about him was he had a 2-liter of Nestea with him. So he had a 2-liter bottle of iced tea, and he had his white hoodie on, and he would throw it up in the air and let it just hit the ground, and would laugh, and everyone would look at him, and then he would pick it up and do it again, and it would fall on the ground, and he would sometimes kick it, and then he'd pick it up, open it up, and like take a swig out of it, and then put it back, and then look at everyone and laugh with this big smile on his face, and then throw it back up into the air again. It would land on the ground right here.
The first time that I met Ben is completely different from the way that I remember him. I met him in 2007, which was 7 years ago, which is pretty crazy. The group used to hang out at Colchester School. We thought we were cool to hang out there since we were like 17, 18. And Ben had really long black hair, like even longer than my hair. And he always wore these black band t-shirts, really big jeans. He was really quiet. And I came up to him and I was like, "Hey, how's it going? Like, I'm a friend of Evelyn's." And he told me that he knew who I was. And I was like, "Well, I haven't met you before." And he's like, "Yeah, you have." And he told me that he went to my high school and then he'd sit in the hallway and wave at me and then I'd ignore him. And I'm not like that at all. Like, I pride myself on being friendly to everybody. And so I felt really guilty and really bad about it. And so I asked a couple people, I was like, "Does Ben go to Point Grey?" Like, he told me that I ignore him, and apparently it was a huge lie. He'd come up with this huge story and told it to me, and I guess to make me feel bad? I don't know, to see how I'd react.
First time I met Ben Terry was...
Oh, you were with Mike, of course.
I was with Mike.
Yeah.
It was the first time that I hung out with Mike, and we went to Ben Terry's house, and he asked me how old my sister was. He asked me what school my sister went to. He asked me what she looked like, and I was just offended by all of those things.
It was like, I knew him in grade 8, but I didn't know him. He was just that weird kid Ben. I didn't hate him or anything. We thought he was funny. He was just so ridiculous. You remember?
I remember I have this vivid memory of like grade 8 camp, and like he was just, we weren't allowed to bring like candy or anything like that, but sure enough he brought like a shitload of pop, and he just was going berserk, running around.
He was bullied all throughout school, actually. He was always given some crap because he was the weird kid. And I remember him being bullied in elementary school, and even a few of his friends would bully him a bit. And I'm sure that I've been a victim. When you're a kid, it's a rite of passage. People bully each other a lot.
Do you think he was bullied?
I mean, I would imagine so. Have you met him?
Terry was bullied in high school and had to change schools multiple times. What do you think about this?
No, not aware, don't believe it.
Yeah, I don't believe it either.
Yeah, which ones?
Oh, yeah, I did bully him. But actually, well, because at first I wasn't his friend. There was a time in grade 8 when me and Taylor Grindle burned his hair. In grade 8, we because we was hanging outside the front of the school, and back then I was a dickhead, so I did mean things. Yeah, okay, we had these really fucked up sewing machines where if you put in the thread the wrong way, it jammed everything up, and I think I put the thread in the wrong way on Ben's sewing machine, and it jammed up his, what he was working on. Something like that, yeah.
Even in high school, Ben kept showing signs of eccentric and erratic behavior. With this scenario, bullying was inevitable.
In grade 8, he wanted to buy a knife off me, and back then we were like selling knives in elementary school, and I sold him a knife, and after selling it to him, he wanted his money back after I sold it to him. Like, we were in the hallway, and I'm like, okay, sure, here's, it was a knife that I bought at the store for like $5. Sold it to Ben for 15, because obviously I put a premium on the cost, like, obviously. Yeah. And so then he's like, literally I gave it to him, and then afterwards he's like, oh, I want my money back. Like, he wanted just wanted his money back. And I'm like, no, dude, like, I just made the deal, like,
I think anyone can be bullied, and he seems like an easy-ish target with, like, his kind of weird behaviors and outbursts kind of things, and, like, kind of attention-seeking ways. I don't know if those happen before he was bullied. Sometimes they can be a symptom of being bullied too much, right?
But yeah, it was probably a very negative experience for him, I assume.
Ben decided to switch high schools to get away from the torment and hopefully get a clean start. Ben's efforts were in vain. His continued actions and outbursts led him to exactly where he was in the first place.
When he had long hair, grade 10, and my friend, I can't say his name, said that he showed up at a party, saw Ben Terry there getting his ass beat by another white guy, getting his hair pulled on, getting punched in the face because he had long hair and looked like a fucking dummy.
I mean, I think everyone just thought he was just this, like, guy who was, like, on Ritalin because he's just so hyper all the time, and I think there's a lot people didn't know maybe at the time about him. They just assumed, which isn't always the right thing to do.
How detrimental an effect bullying can have on someone. It can absolutely destroy somebody. You know, just imagining it now, you almost get chills down your spine, like going to school every day, a place where that should be friendly and at least somewhat welcoming. You know, you're going there and you get physically assaulted, verbally assaulted. It's fucking ridiculous. And the worst part about it is everyone's just standing around you and nothing happens. So I can't blame Ben for wanting to switch schools. You know, it's like every aspect of switching schools. Like you're just hoping for something better. You're hoping that maybe, you know, if the bullying does continue, maybe someone in your class at the new school will have the balls big enough to stand up to someone and tell them to fuck off. But, you know, like that is probably the best reason for wanting to switch schools. If you're being bullied, you know, most school administrators won't do anything about it. They'll just sit there with their thumbs up their ass and everything's dandy and happy-go-lucky, when in reality it's just, you know, you're being tormented every day.
You know, people get bullied, right? Everybody's been there one form or another, whether it's being the bully or being bullied. And I think at some stage you have to move on, and it seems like he's moved several schools, and he tried to, and it didn't quite work.
So you got bullied at one point. Big fucking deal. That's high school, alright? Everybody shits on everybody. That's how it works. You either toughen up or you fucking kill yourself, because you're not better off here, alright?
You had to switch multiple times, but this kind of feels like a dick thing to say, but if you have to switch multiple times, like maybe some of the problem is with what you're doing.
Like, yeah, it was wrong, but I mean, at the same time, Ben kind of lit the fire, so to speak.
During the time of high school, there was a Facebook group called I Hate Ben Terry.
I heard about that. I actually did hear about that, but I didn't know who he was. I maybe saw him in the hall like twice.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, I'm not gonna join that shit.
I think it sucks. Like, if you hate someone, just like, if you don't like someone, don't make it a public thing. Because I'm pretty sure that affected him to some way why he's like that. Why he doesn't trust people as much. Could be because of that. It's like,
I don't know. That's really rough, and especially now when you see people are committing suicide over stupid stuff posted on Facebook and online. It's tough, and you know, to be honest, I'm glad Ben's gotten through it. I don't know if anybody could ever ultimately get over that, but at some point you got to move on and make new friends, or make other friends, and yeah, you just got to live your life.
I have a vague recollection of it being around, but I don't really remember what's prompted it or really what the motivating force was. It seems a little juvenile to do, and like it wouldn't really accomplish anything.
I think it's fucking stupid. I hope to God I wasn't part of it in my delusioned young mind, but that's a waste of fucking time. Who started that? Was it Max?
Yeah, oh yeah, I remember Max Kendall made that.
I'm not aware.
I don't know. And I remember Max Kendall made that because he wanted to be friends with Ben Terry. It was a cry for help.
Like, recognize him. Oh, Max Kendall made this. Maybe I should be his friend.
how does that work? Like, to me, it doesn't work. Maybe I'm just dumb, but it doesn't.
If anyone can
come
make
to
it
me.
work, it's Max Kendall.
There's better ways to, you know, get people's attention to become friends. Well, I think the step one is not making a Facebook group that says I hate Ben. Step two is just, you know, just not doing that, and maybe give him a call or a text. So that's a very good way of doing that. So if you want to be someone's friends, you don't make pages like that. That's bullshit.
The incentive behind it was that Max Kendall, the creator, would become Ben's friend to get his attention through the group. And surprisingly, this crazy plan actually worked. Within the year, Max Kendall and myself, who were in the group, became his friend, which I still don't know how this happened, but it just did. At one point, there was a I Hate Ben Terry Facebook group. What can you tell me about this?
Well, I haven't been on Facebook. I haven't had an account on there for like at least 5 years. So I was never a part of it, nor have I ever heard of it until you just mentioned it. But I guess was it an actual hate thing, or was it just kind of a joke hate thing?
And I don't know why, but he switched schools to Kits. Got kicked out of Kits. Said he went to PW. No one ever saw him at PW, and he kind of made a kind of story.
I've always asked Ben about this personally, about what high school he went to in grade 12 or grade 11, grade 10 even. He's always very evasive about this topic, would never give me a clear answer, but always changed his stories to I went to Point Grey, or I was only there for a week at Lord Bing, or some type of made-up story that didn't make sense.
I remember for the longest time, I don't think I can't remember if he graduated high school or if he didn't, and then he went to like get music school, but I mean, what kind of, how are you gonna make a living doing that?
Well, he obviously hasn't completed high school, so that in terms of actual education in comparison to graded education, his graded education is like, who knows, it's not even high school equivalent, but his personal education of a lot of other things must be much higher, because you don't just stop learning things, it's just a matter if it's graded or not, right? So
I think from what I remember, he didn't graduate high school. I think like grade 9 or 10 he finished.
I knew immediately because I was hanging out with him when he wasn't going to high school, and I was hanging out with him a lot because I was a problem child in high school too. So I know that he never completed high school.
I know that he didn't finish high school, and again, that's not something that's worth judging someone over.
I think that's awful. I don't know what to say. I think education's important. I've gone to university for several years. I haven't completed my university career, but I think for me personally, I found high school to be very influential, and meeting the people I did, I thought was great.
I think that might explain some of my perceived issues with him making long-term friends, and being able to trust people.
Once you all graduate after grade 12, everyone seems to step it up a bit more and be a bit more. There's no more bullshit. There's no more cliquey bullshit or whatever. For the most part, everyone likes to think they're like, okay, now we're young adults. So him not graduating and not having that experience of that closure from the terrible period in time we call high school, the terrible and wonderful period, that probably has a lot to do with a lot of things.
Ben's life would only become more difficult. Sometime in 2006-2007, Ben had developed a mental illness called psychosis.
Yeah, I have no comment on that.
No comment.
No comment.
I would hang out with him in UBC when he had his long hair, and he was trying to impress a group of people who he wanted to become very good friends with because of whatever metal head reasons at the time. And instead of hanging out with me that time, he ditched me and went and smoked pot with them, and I just went home.
He had said that he had gone to UBC to go smoke weed with these metal friends or metal people. And after that, he felt weird for like a week, and it wasn't going away. And things would shift, objects would change. And it would stay this way for weeks and then months.
He got psychosis from an early age because of some bad reaction with marijuana. Apparently it can happen.
I'd say he probably had like a predisposition to it, so like it doesn't necessarily mean that the marijuana would have given him that, but he probably had a predisposition to it, and then it, triggered it. Or
I don't believe you just smoke, a joint of grass and have this weird psychotic, just like thing develop in your brain, right? Maybe he thought he had it, so he started taking some medication, which maybe evolved that thing in his brain.
He did tell me once in secret that he was taking strong antipsychotic medication, and I I was in a situation like that once when I was in school because of the school boards and their bullshit. And I can only say that these pharmaceutical drugs save 1% of people and they harm the other 99. And I said to him, if you're on that shit, get off it, and seek help, because that stuff can be in sometimes irreversible.
He would tell me, dude, you don't know what it's like to look at your hand and just not know what it is.
It's one of those things that, because it's not talked about, you don't really know that you know people with it. And then it also kind of feeds back into the stigma against mental illness as well, because you don't know that you know people with it.
Like, I've worked with someone who had a trigger of a marijuana-related, like, psychotic break. We had to have her, like, committed at the hospital.
I think he was taking medication for that too, and I really didn't like that. But whatever helps,
But, pharmaceutical drugs can reorganize how your brain operates, and that's not ever, I'm not going to say a good thing or a bad thing, but that's not ever, like, something you do half-heartedly.
Somehow I told my mom about it, and she's a doctor. It came up, and she says, oh, is he okay? He, just make sure there's nothing I could do, but she says, well, try to make sure he takes his medication that he's prescribed and doesn't, not take enough of it. Doesn't take too much, but just my mom being the doctor was just like, make sure he does whatever his doctor tells him to do.
Well, yeah, there are plenty of high-functioning people with mental disorders. It's just a matter of being savvy about your condition and monitoring it well. Do I think that Ben monitors himself well? No. Do I think that it's having an adverse effect on him? I don't know. I don't think I've seen him in good enough mental health to judge whether or not he's in poor mental health.
I think people knew he had a mental illness and they treated him that way. Like, I think it was clearly known.
He tried to hide that stuff from us, I remember, and there was like this big reveal that he opened this drawer, I remember, one time at his house, and he showed us this stuff, and I can't even remember really what it was about, but he tried to keep a lot of secrets, and with that type of shit, especially in this day and age, it's not the best thing to keep it secret. I'm a very honest guy, and I just keep it out in the open, and I don't care what people think. But I think he cared too much what people think. That's one of the problems.
If people knew, they'd probably, segregate them or treat them, in a negative way. Because, people, especially in the high school setting, they look for every single thing wrong with you and they pick at it, right? So I don't think coming out and saying I have mental illness would have gotten positive welcome.
Do you think people would have treated him differently if they knew he had psychosis back then?
Back then, I don't think so. It's like most people, the first time you met Ben, you knew he was quirky, he was kind of weird. That was most people's general consensus when they first meet him, but I don't think anyone would have treated differently. He was weird, but he didn't do anything super weird or off-putting. He was just an interesting guy, I guess.
I don't think so, because I definitely remember one time that Zach Chandler heard about it and he said he didn't care at all. I'd never judged anybody for having an issue like that. I never judged Ben for it or thought less of him for it. And, overall, I never really thought anything of it. I always knew Ben the way that he was. And, he was just, from what I had seen, really happy, kind of go-lucky guy, just down to have a good time. But, yeah, I'd never think anything differently about anyone who'd have a condition like that.
I think people would have immediately treated him differently. Yeah, some people might have avoided him because they might have excused his weirdness because of the mental illness, and some people don't want that because they think it's baggage, maybe.
He probably would have been treated differently. Whether he would have been treated with a little more patience or with a little more disdain or fear, that's either way.
Who I think would have stuck by him and wouldn't have treated him differently, but not everyone's open-minded. I'm sure some people would have thought that he was crazy and excluded him from stuff and made him feel more isolated.
I think those people would put more thought into their words and say, be a little more careful on the negative side.
I remember the first thing I said to him was, after he told me, was that this doesn't change anything. You're still my friend, we're still gonna hang out, I would not treat you any differently. Even after all the hardship, Ben had found some relief in his life. He had found his first girlfriend. Although, as usual in Ben's life, happiness is short-lived.
Ben thought I fucked his girlfriend, who I introduced him to. Christiana, Ben's first real girlfriend, admitted later. He said he had tons of girlfriends before her, and then he actually admitted, like, no, she's like my first, I introduced him to did it for like a year or something. They were close, and she liked him because of his long hair and whatever, and she's stuck in the 70s, but like, they got along great. She dumped him because he was being fucking Ben and weird.
Right after I became friends with Ben was when his girlfriend had broken up with him. And the story that he had told me was that he had gone to this party, and there's this really cool girl there called Alexis or Alexandria, something like that. And he thought she was really cool, and he got her phone number and wanted to hang out with her. I don't know if there was any more intended after that. But his girlfriend found out through a mutual friend of Ben's and had broken up with him, essentially, after finding out that information. There was a good prelude where I'd seen Ben on a couple interactions before we actually became friends. The first time I had a run-in with him was a couple years into high school, and I was busing home from high school, and I got off, and while walking across Dunbar and 41st, I get a tap on the shoulder, and I turn around and I look at this guy, and he looked strange, leather jacket, black everything, really long hair, and he's like, "Hey man, how's it going?" And I looked at him and I was like, "Hey, who are you?" And he's like, "It's Ben, man." And I'm like, who? I had completely forgotten who he was. And he's like, "Barang." And I'm like, "Oh." And the first thing I say to him is, "Wow, you have a lot of hair." And he laughed, and he followed me almost to my house before leaving and said goodbye. And that was the first time I'd seen him out of high school, and a couple years later. The second time I met him in these times of preludes was I had met him for a brief period of time when I was coming back from the UBC from the arcade at 12 a.m. And I'd gotten on the bus, and I was by myself for a while. And then all of a sudden, this person comes onto the bus, and I look, and it's Ben with his long hair. And he noticed me like right away, and he came over and said hi, and we started chatting, and I asked him what he was doing, and he said he was hanging out. And I remember specifically he started asking me about Nexopia and if I had Nexopia, and I said yeah, and he asked me for my username and stuff so he could add me, and I said it was Scott with one T. He lost his shit. He laughed so hard for a good 10 minutes, and he said I was a liar, and that could be someone had already taken it. Someone must have taken it. And I said, "No, man, that's what it is, Scott with one T. So you can add me up anytime." And so I get to my stop, and I ask him, "Hey, is this your stop?" And he's like, "No, I'm a couple more down." And I get off the bus, and we say our goodbyes. So that was the second time I'd seen him. The third time I saw Ben, it was Christmas break. It was the last day of high school before Christmas break. My friends and I, we were going down to the bus stop, but we were a little bit up from the bus stop, and we were waiting around, and I asked someone what we were doing, and they said we're waiting for Ben. He's going to buy us alcohol.
In grade 10, he used to boot for us.
Put on a leather jacket, like an oversized leather jacket, and he'd go in and he'd buy liquor for us, and they just wouldn't ID him because he'd look really scary and weird, and they just the kind of guy you don't fuck with, and he made himself look bigger than he was.
And they used to not even ID him.
I couldn't believe it because he was the same age as us. He was 15, and sure enough, there was this black blur walking towards us, and closer and closer it came. It was Ben, and he was holding a liquor bag, and he had bought alcohol, and I couldn't believe it. He was 15, and he had this big beard and long hair and dark sunglasses, black everything, and he had bought alcohol. And he got praised by everyone, even though there was a bunch of people there that I knew didn't like him. And he saw me and said, "Hey, and he offered me a drink, but I said no, and he lost his shit. He couldn't believe I didn't drink. So, and after that, I just bust home, and yeah, that was the third time I saw him. The fourth time I met Ben was the time we became friends. I was at Point Grey. I was there with my buddies hanging out. They were waiting for their girlfriends. Their girlfriends at the time went to Point Grey, and we were just hanging around near the ice rink area. And sure enough, there's this dark spot or blob coming towards us from the distance, and it's Ben. And I don't know if that was planned or not, but he walked right up to us, said hi. My friends and their girlfriends were on their way leaving, and he was like, hey man, do you like video games? And at the time I was like, yeah, I love video games. And he's like, well, my dad is getting the new Xbox with the new Halo. What do you think about that? I was like, that's pretty cool, man. That's like, wow, is that true? And he's like, I can tell my dad to get it for me. And I was like, oh, okay. He's like, do you want to come over? I said, yeah, sure. So we go over to Ben's house, and this is the first time I've ever been to Ben's house. I went into Ben's house, saw everything, hung out in his room. I had to make arrangements to stay over because we were obviously going to play for a while. And thankfully it was Friday, and my parents let me sleep over. And sure enough, Ben's dad came home with an Xbox and the new Halo, and we set it up in the living room, and we played for 7 hours and like 49 minutes, and we beat the new Halo. And that's when I believe Ben and I became friends. What were people's reactions back then when Ben Terry was mentioned?
That kid? Fuck no. Hell nah. Don't invite that kid.
People I can remember just, being like, well, fuck that kid. Like, I don't want, no, that kid can't come to my house, or no, I don't want to go hang out with that kid.
A lot of people would shit talk him, to say it bluntly. A lot of people wouldn't treat him with any kind of respect because they thought he was bizarre and weird.
I think it's not a big secret that a lot of people were hating on him back in first year college or grade 12. Nobody wanted to hang out with him, and I think me and Scott were one of those two people who always had his back, right? We knew what was going on, and we did our best to try to invite him to parties, and we told people like, dude, it's okay, he's a cool kid, just give him a chance, man. Let him be your friend, and just accept him for who he is, man. He might be weird, but he's funny weird, right? He kind of brightens up the mood of the party because he does his Ben jokes, he does his stupid facial impressions, which always makes people laugh, right?
I've heard stories, and I think it's because of the fact of two individuals. One is Scott, one is Nick. And just because they became Ben's friend, everyone else, and I'm not saying this, I'm quoting people. They were kind of forced to be Ben's friend. People didn't like him, and this is what they told me. The only reason they even became Ben's friends because they wanted to hang out with you and Nick. And you guys were hanging out with Ben.
One individual had said in an email interview, because once one friend started hanging out with him, all the sheeple followed.
I stick to my original statement. I sacrificed my time not to be at certain events and certain parties just to not make Ben feel excluded, and I still hope to this day that he thinks about that and appreciates that.
He hung out with Nick every day, and he hung out with Paul every day. They were way closer with Ben than I was. So.
I tried to get him invited to parties. I tried to, talk him up to make him seem like a good guy to other people, to give him a chance, and I, put a tremendous amount of effort and energy into doing that.
Why did you feel you had to do that?
I wanted to be a good friend. I'd feel bad for him. I wanted him to be able to hang out with all my friends as well, instead of being isolated from everyone, because more friends would probably, everyone wants more friends. It would do I thought it would do him some good, so I tried to help him out as best I could.
Why do you think there's a shift from hatred to love towards Ben with certain individuals?
Probably feeling bad for the guy.
It's probably just guilt. If you hate on someone and you slander them for so long, and then after a while you just kind of realize that you're a big piece of shit for doing that. And then you kind of look at things differently and you see maybe that person's a whole lot different than you thought originally. And I think that's probably what happened here.
Why do you think there was this shift from hatred to love towards Ben?
I thought that myself and a few other people's hard work was finally paying off. We,
you know, made him seem like a good, decent guy, you know, slowly incorporated him to parties and whatnot and hanging out with us, and people finally said, hey, you know, this guy isn't such a bad guy once we get to know him after all.
Like, after hanging out with him multiple times, you appreciate the guy. He's a nice guy.
I think people grew up, simply put.
It's not that surprising. Like, one of the reasons I started hanging out with Ben more is just because every Friday I get a call from like Austin or someone else, like, yo man, what you doing tonight? It's like, oh, not much. It's like, oh, come over to Ben's house, we're gonna drink here. And like Ben used to have parties like all the time, and because of that, he got like more popularity just because, oh, this guy has a free house and lets us drink there. So
I think like the greater thing was people are like, oh, house party versus annoying host, so kind of pick that.
I think it's because he became more chill, and I think people might have had a change in opinion after he stopped being into the whole metal scene, and also he started coming out a bit more to some bars. He never liked clubs, but even though he didn't like them, he came to a few of them.
I was with Ben the day he decided to cut his hair, as were all his other important friends. And we went to this place in Kerrisdale, and they were going to do it for free because Ben had decided to cut his hair for cancer and donate it. And that was a really big change for Ben after having his long hair for so long and it being a part of him. And I was really shocked, but you know, it's something he wanted to do, so I guess he thought it was the next step.
So with that, he started to clean himself up, you know, very clean cut, clean shaved, and a lot of people loved him for a really long time.
Before there could be friendship, there had to be hate. He made a video that was a politically incorrect video labeling different African Americans as N-words. Why he did this, I haven't a clue. I have no idea why he would do this. It was so outside his profile.
Yeah. Ben decided it would be a good idea to make a very, very racist video towards African American people. He would list different types of African American people. So
themed around black people, and he threw the N-word around a lot. And I think he was if I remember correctly, he was categorizing certain types of black people using the N-word.
So I actually saw the video. Ben put it up, and it would show, I think it was playing a rap song or some type of music, and it would show a bunch of different types of black people and say like blank N-word after it, like some type of adjective N-word, switch to another picture, and it goes on for like a minute or so. And at the end, it shows a picture of Austin and says like unique or some other type of N-word, like some other type of adjective before calling Austin a N-word.
He put Austin Nori, who's a mutual friend of ours, like toward the end of it, and used his picture when he was classifying a wigger.
The person who was put in the video came into his house, but I think they met in the back alleyway, and just one or two punches here and there. Then the police started getting involved, then actually Ben got into more trouble than the person who punched Ben, right? So it's just...
So one day, I drove Austin to Ben's house and sat in my car and watched Austin like meet Ben in the alley and then sucker punch him like in the head.
I ended up meeting with Miles, and as we were leaving, we were driving down the alleyway, and he was in the alleyway. I get out of Miles's car, and I'm like, Ben, why did you make this video? Like, you knew how insulting it was, and you knew like that you were gonna have to get like hurt for this. So I just simply punched him in the face a few times. I get a phone call 2 hours later, like while I'm eating dinner with it, and it's the police, and they tell me, oh, like so and so, like you obviously you had a confrontation with Ben. And they tell me they saw the video and they would like to talk to me. So they drive downtown. I meet them at where Chicagna is. It's on Thurlow and Robson. Meet the police officers in the Starbucks. And I'm like telling them my side of the story, what happened. And they asked me if I wanted to charge Ben for hate crimes. So I was actually surprised because they wanted me to charge Ben. And they seemed like because it would be a civil suit in court, right? And so Ben essentially would have charged me for assault, but he didn't, and I wasn't going to charge him for hate crimes. And the police were like pretty concerned that like it was a pretty offensive video to begin with.
I don't think Austin got an apology. I don't think he did, no. And I don't think he ever will.
Then he put someone who already didn't like him, who hated him, in the video. And this person was like, I remember speaking to this person, he's like, this is fantastic news. Now I can finally punch him in the face and have a good reason.
At 16, 17 years old, you're looking for a reason to punch someone in the face, so you don't give that person a reason. Right?
Physical violence is never a really good idea in general. I think it's awful that Ben would make something like that and then associate Austin with it without asking. I don't know anything about any of this.
And if Miles sees this video, I don't know why he always thought like he was like better than people in high school. But like he almost like was always like him and Austin versus Ben. It always seemed that way.
And it was really funny to see that happen because something that he had done bit him in the ass and he didn't expect it to, and it's very funny to see something that's a shock. It was funny because I didn't feel bad for him because maybe he had deserved it a little bit because he treaded on the edge of of being politically correct and crossed the line a few times, right? And at the time, when you're a teenager, people believe in revenge still. So obviously, some vengeance was doled out on Ben, and it was unexpected and juvenile, I think, ultimately.
Facilitate hate if you're the subject to hate yourself. If you're bullied out of 3 high schools, why would you perpetuate that by spreading more hate? That's horrible.
In this situation, I won't say Ben wasn't in the wrong because it's a joke, but I know if someone made the same video about me, I'd get fucking pissed off and show up in their backyard with a few friends.
I definitely think the assailants are wrong. The assailants are the people that conduct the assault, right? Yeah, I mean, at his own house, like, I think that you can say what you want. I don't think you should be scared of someone coming to your house and beating you up.
We made up afterwards. We became really good friends.
Ben loved Halloween. It was his favorite season, favorite day. He'd always get prepared. He'd always want to get the most unique, interesting costumes, really play the part. And this one Halloween was the time he was going to have a Halloween party. And Nick and I invited all our friends, and this was his first real shot to make new friends, and we were really excited for him, and it was on a day he really loved. And I think after that people kind of chilled a little bit more.
I mean, he had parties all the time. I think some people definitely wanted to go to a party at a comfortable, nice house that was always filled with people that they knew and always wanted to have a good time because his parties were quite legendary. He had keggers and he had basement keggers and all these things, and he would let a few friends DJ, and it was always a good time.
Most people only got to see the party side of Ben, or the I host a party Ben personality, which he put on a bit of facade for people, at least what I believe. Talking to him personally, one-on-one, there'd be many times where he would say that most of them were just there for his parties, most of them just didn't give a crap, most of them didn't really care other than it was a place to associate and just have a fun time. Whether he accepted those people as friends or not, I don't believe so.
Do you think people used him for his house and for parties?
Yeah, I mean, I remember him like telling me that, like, people are using me, man. People are using me, and like, but at the same time, he just accepted it and he just let it happen. You gotta put your foot down, so to speak, if you want that stuff to stop.
I've heard that Ben felt used for parties or for hanging out at his house. I think the people he considered good friends, or at least friends, did use him. Maybe he had some acquaintances that really only hung out with him when he was having a party at his house.
Use him, that'd be an interesting way to put it, because I wouldn't say I would use him for parties. He just happened to have a house, and it was kind of centralized, because at that time, like, it was like my girlfriend used to live in Carrollville. Like, his house was just in the right area to kind of connect us all, because it's like between your house and my house and like Drew's house to your house, and like just it works really well on a lot of levels to like as a good meeting spot for parties. And his parents were really chill with us over. Well, actually, I don't know that. They just kind of seemed to stand there and.
I don't think anybody was like, "Yo, Ben, can I have a party at your place? Like, invite a couple people, right?" And then it ended up being like 50 people. I believe Ben may have originally had the idea of having a party. 10, 20 people may have come over, and then somebody brought 10 other people over that weren't invited, or Ben didn't know, or he knew one or two of them. But I don't necessarily think specifically people used him or his house specifically for parties.
Do you think individuals used him for his house and parties?
Oh, fuck yeah. I heard people talking about it. People would I remember, I don't want to say names, but I remember people being like, "Oh man, like, fuck that Ben Terry kid, but whatever, let's go party at his house."
Sure, there were a lot of people who just like hung out with Ben just because of the house parties.
I don't know if this was before he started having house parties, because I could totally see people like wanting to go to house parties, and so kind of putting up with him through that, and then maybe they genuinely kind of got along with him after that. Maybe they were just using him. Who knows?
And I don't know about use. Using is a very dangerous word because it implies that some people were trying to be malicious against him. I think ultimately it was just like, well, I'm bored, let's throw a party. That's was Ben's mentality. And I kind of would push him. Someone's like, "Hey, are you going to do that Halloween thing this year, or are you going to back out?" And I would ask him from a place of just like, "Are you going to, like, what's your plan?" Because he sets a precedent, you know. He likes to enjoy himself, and he liked to have parties, that's for sure. And I don't think people used him for that. I think people just wanted a safe place to go to have a reasonably good night and enjoy themselves. And I think he can agree with me on that. I don't think people really used him. I think if you were to say that, it would come from a place of ego, which I don't think is what his main focus is right now. It sounds like ego is out of the question right now for him.
Everything was going great. Ben was now friends with my friends, and everything was going great. We were partying, we were hanging out, everyone would accept him. It'd be fine. I mean, and then somewhere down the road, 2 or 3 years later, he had tried to talk to Nick and myself about wanting to break off and disassociate from them, because he's like, "No, man, these people, you know, they don't do anything for us. They're boring. Like, we should go find new friends and not associate with them anymore." And Nick and I were kind of taken back by that.
Are you aware that Ben Terry premeditatively decided to disassociate himself from his friends?
Yeah, because he told me firsthand. That's like when you say, "I'm going to the gym." It makes you feel like you don't have to go to the... Why do you tell people what you're going to do? Why don't you just do it? I think that's a major character flaw of many people.
There was one time we brought up this argument. I actually said it to him. Why are you doing this, man? We got you into the crew. You hanged out for all these years, and now you're just kind of starting to fade away, and you started to treat those people like shit. You don't pick up your calls. You don't answer your texts. When somebody calls you, you just don't bother picking you up. And I was in the room when he just ignored calls. And he didn't really have a straight answer for me.
It was just Ben and myself in his room, and we had his computer hooked up to the TV. I was on Facebook on his TV and he started talking about leaving all the people that, you know, I was looking at on Facebook. He asked me if I would go with him to abandon all these people. I said right then and there, no, I would not. He started saying, "You don't even know that person that well," and I was like, "So they're friends of my friends. They're all my friends." From that moment on, he started saying what I would like to call is memorized attacks on people. Individuals he had memorized personal information from, and started saying it in a very negative way. He did that for over 50 people on my friends list. And the things he said about these people were very personal. They were collected. It was collected information that was twisted to be very harmful, and it was very cruel. And I couldn't believe he had said those things about those people.
I don't know why he would say that. Maybe he didn't meet all of his friends, because that sounds awfully antisocial of him. Maybe he was just trying to get attention by saying things like that.
You know, bring up topics like, why do we hang out with these people, man? Like, there's no, like, they don't benefit us anyway. And I'd always kind of retaliate because I have multiple groups of friends, right? And him saying that about my other friends it was very hurtful. So I would say, why would these people benefit you anyway? They're your friends. They're not supposed to, like, you know, give you some sort of a benefit package for you to become higher in society. They're your friends. You're hanging out with them. You drink with them. You go watch movies with them. If there's other reasons he did not want to hang out with people, and that's I'm very unaware of that. But there were a few times where he wanted to disassociate.
I think that Ben says a lot of things behind people's backs about who he actually thinks they are and what he actually thinks of them.
During the time of Ben's first wanting to disassociate from his friends, he had an opportunity to cool off. And the opportunity was that he got accepted into Selkirk Music School in Nelson, BC.
First time I met Ben, he came across as a musical genius.
When someone says his name, what do you think of? What are your first thoughts?
My first thoughts is musician.
Ben was always into music from the start. The first time I met him, he was always into music. Throughout the time I knew him, he was deeply involved with music. He could play the piano and the guitar, and he'd play music for other people. He'd go to parties and play piano at people's houses, and he was really involved with music. But at the same time, I think he did show off just a little bit with it.
I remember after making out with my friend at a party and going on a date with her, he told her he would not go away for the music program to stay in Vancouver if she would be his girlfriend.
And what did she say?
She said, fuck no. She was freaked the fuck out. She's like, we've been on one date and you want to, like, change your life for me? That's fucked.
But every time I did see him, I would talk to him a lot about music and what he was learning at Selkirk and how the experience was. But I think that might have been a poor environment for him to go and learn in, because Ben does have quite, magical mind for music. He was a very skilled guitar player. There are certain things that he could do way better than other things. But I think if he had gone to a school that had a more concentrated view on attendance and education, rather than you're an adult now, you can do what you want, he would have excelled.
If there's one thing he needs in life, it's a routine. It's a daily routine. He needs, like, strict enforcement, and it's never going to happen. That's my personal theory.
He had a love of music, and he always had great ideas. He needed them to be nurtured. He wanted to do something with music, and I convinced him to go to Selkirk College in Nelson, BC. And I had to work very hard with Ben to be able to get there because he had absolutely no rhythm skills. And I had to train him for months and months to be able to attain these skills. And I told him, I says, I can get you there, but you don't waste my time. You can't show up one lesson unprepared, or else you can't come back. That's the deal. And so he met the deal, and he did well, and he got into Selkirk College, so I was very proud of him for doing that.
His parents paid for that shit, and he didn't learn a single thing during the entire session. Which I am pretty sure is pretty accurate from what fucking Zach Chandler told me.
He had a really good opportunity. He went to a music production school. He spent a year there. I don't know if he dropped out or he just quit because he didn't like it.
Like, he used to be a musician. What happened to that? He was so passionate about music and the guitar. He's a great guitar player and everything. And now, I wouldn't think he's into any of that. Now he's just into, like, practices of the mind and crazy...
And he said that he wasn't going to play guitar anymore because it was all for his own ego. He wanted to do it to impress people. He wanted just to look really good. And he said that he couldn't do something that made him feel that way anymore because he didn't want to, boost his ego anymore. So he stopped playing guitar. Quote, he no longer could play music because he did it solely to boost his own ego and impress other people, end quote.
Well, the world of guitar is a competitive one for some strange reason. And I think a lot of people get into it and get caught up in the competitiveness about it. Let's say it's someone like a high jumper or a shot putter or a weightlifter or something. They want to be the best they can be, so they're kind of competing against other people. So I think a lot of people feel that way. Unfortunately, in the guitar community, they don't in other communities. But it is one of the things that happens in the guitar community. So I'm sure he felt some of that. Maybe.
I followed in his footsteps a lot. I mean, I started picking up the guitar because my great buddy is playing guitar. And he started hating that. And he wanted me to play another instrument because he didn't want the glory or something to be got. I don't know.
After Ben came back from Nelson, he worked at his dad's computer store, Zip, in Kerrisdale. And we would always go there after class from post-secondary and just hang out with him and do silly stuff and chill.
I'll say I hate you!
Hello, Zip Computer. How may I help you? Yes. Good. You came yesterday. I remember. Can you hold on a second, please?
One second. This is fucked.
No, stop walking. Don't go into the window light.
Give me your money.
You should get down from there.
A lot of fun times, but then eventually, over those 3 or 4 years of being clean cut, being the Ben Terry that I wanted to be associated with, one day he just started to act really weird. Not really weird, but just out of it.
Do you remember his stance on drugs in early 2000?
Against drugs. He was completely against marijuana. He was completely against any drugs. In fact, if he found out one of his friends tried marijuana or pot, he would, trash talk them behind their back. Not saying that, there's drugs like weed, which is, by my standards nowadays, is okay. But during those times, he was completely against it. He told me he tried it once in grade 8, and he hated it. And he was against that.
He was completely against weed or marijuana in any shape or form. He hated it, didn't even want to talk. He didn't want to be friends with me or Miles because we did it. Like, he was so against it.
So back then, drugs were the antichrist to his ideology of his personal ideology.
So conservative. Wanted nothing to do with anything about any sort of substance that could alter your state of mind in any way. He was against drugs, 100% would never do them. Was scared to even be around anyone that was partaking in any type of substance.
He cared a lot about brain health. He would take a lot of fish oil, and he would try to educate himself on health and things like that, and understand why he got ill and the reasons. And drugs became his scapegoat to an argument that you could never win against, because when everyone knows when Ben decides something, that's it. Like, that's his point of view.
He used to have people over to his house all the time. Like, we'd all hang out, play Rock Band, you know, do stuff like that. And if there's anybody who like went out to smoke weed, he'd always make sure he went on a rant about it.
I do know that he gave me a lecture or two when we first met, because I like to indulge myself at times. Not anymore, but I have a history of that. And he was quite on my ass about that. He said, it's bad for your smoking. And he was very vivid about it.
Ben wanted nothing to do with smoking weed, and I remember seeing...
He thought that shit was stupid.
And I remember somebody's trying to sell us weed outside Dunbar Theater, and Ben Terry walking away.
He was very against them. Super anti-drug, would lecture other people about doing drugs and how they were bad for you. He said, like he would list off problems with them, and he was very, very against drugs at that time.
And do you know what his stance is on drugs right now?
Yes, he loves drugs. He's tried a bunch of drugs. The first time he did marijuana again in about, 8 years, I was completely shocked. I was taken back. Like, I actually didn't believe it for the first time.
Get a call from Ben one night, and he was like, "Hey, what's up?" It's like, "Want to hang out?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." It's like, "Oh, by the way, do you have any weed?" And I'm just like, "Whoa, Ben Terry's wants to smoke some drugs?" I was like, "Holy shit!" Just because before that he was super anti-drinking, anti-smoking. So, anyways, we get up, roll up a joint, meet up with him in a park. I was like, "All right, Ben, let's go do this." And he was like, "I don't know, man. Are you sure we're gonna get high off this?" And it was like an average. I'm like, "Yeah, don't worry about it." It's like, "No, man, I don't think I'm gonna get high off this." And I'm like, "Yeah, you will. Trust me." So we smoke and everything goes normal. Then once we're done, it's like, "Yo, man, I'm too fucking high right now." And this would happen the first few times. He'd be like, "No, man, this won't get me high." Finish like 10 minutes later, "Man, I'm way too fucking high right now." Like every time he did not learn his limit. It's like if this was drinking, it'd be like the equivalent of seeing a Mickey of vodka. It's like, "No, man, this isn't gonna get me drunk." Chugging it, then being like blackout drunk. He did not understand his limit for the first month or so I was with him.
Last time I heard, he went to Shambhala, did a bunch of, hallucinogenic. Is that how you say that word?
And now he smokes tons of weed and does lots of psychedelics, as far as I know.
Like, that was the vibe I got, was like, he's doing hard drugs now or something. He seemed that sketchy and that, out of it and uncomfortable to see me.
I remember him saying he'd done acid. I remember him saying that he'd gone to, I believe it was Shambhala, or one of the giant hippie music festivals.
I've tried psychoactives. I can certainly imagine, but you shouldn't take them if you've been diagnosed with psychosis. I don't know what he's doing, man.
He really openly admits, as you know, to doing marijuana, mushrooms, and acid. And does this come as a surprise?
Yes, very much so. I mean, after Ben being so anti-drug with myself and other people, and being a person that's never done drugs, it was a huge shock. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I actually had to go ask him about it and confirm that this was true, and he said, yeah, it was. And I was just shocked. I didn't even know what to say to him.
Everything he does, he can't just try something and be like, I thought that was great, or that wasn't that great, or he has to then become that if he likes it. It's like it's his calling.
When he got into smoking, he had at least 4, probably more different dealers he would hit up from, not counting the medical marijuana people.
So he walked in with a big bong. I said, "Hey, Ben,
a big bag of weed.
Big bag of weed, a grinder, a lighter, a couple cigarettes."
First thing I saw, I was greeted by Ben Terry, and he said, "Yo, do you have a bong?" I didn't. I said, "No." And he said, "You got any weed?" I said, No, I don't." And so he told me I was useless to him.
Do you know his current stance on drugs?
Pro marijuana, I think. I don't know.
Why do you think there was that shift from negative to positive?
Because man, he wanted to hang with a different crew of people, and that was their lifestyle. Different crowd, different people, just
time passes and people change, opinions change.
As you get older and more experienced in the world, your attitude about things like drugs do change.
He's moved from the non-experimental phase to the experimental phase of his life, and that's probably why his views now have reflect that.
The drugs thing, I think he wanted to explore the thing that made him who he was, basically. Because without if he didn't do marijuana when he was younger, who knows what that psychosis could have potentially developed into as he got older.
Ben has a BC medical marijuana card. It was prescribed by an in-house doctor by an unknown shop, and he was given the card after he was diagnosed with insomnia. What do you think about that?
I remember he told me the week he got it, and I was just like, well, I guess he's full blown on that train. Like, he's pro drug.
The time he got it, he told me that very same day that he got a card, and we all basically first thing we asked, how do you get it? He's like, yeah, I just told the doctor I have insomnia. Apparently it's that easy to get a card. So I don't think he's actually diagnosed with it from his tone. He just bullshitted way through it to get one.
Well, medical marijuana in British Columbia is a pretty liberal thing anyway. You could pretty much go in there and say, hey, I have an exam coming up, I'm kind of stressed for school, can I have a card? And they'll hand you one happily. So, my opinion on that is maybe Ben didn't need one, but again, that's not for me to say. If he wants something, he can have it. If in this direct situation, if an in-house doctor says it's warranted, then I can't be the person to say that he's wrong, but all I'll say is medical marijuana in British Columbia is very liberal.
It's kind of weird, because all I did was pay $25 as a deposit, and then I booked an appointment with the doctor, went in, paid another $20, and then he just kind of like asked me 3 or 4 questions, and I was in and out in 5 minutes with a medical marijuana card after paying $45, and I was just like...
Him having one is, it's probably a smart thing because you're not going to get arrested for, or you might, but it'll be a good line of defense if you do get arrested for marijuana. So I think that's, it's taking a step to not be so much of a criminal in the eyes of the law.
I think the people who do sell the medical marijuana and are in control of it at the moment are willing to push it as much as possible and will come up with any reason to give you a card.
Again, I'm very pro legalization in general, and so I think that the whole in-house doctor thing, you got insomnia, like it is a bit of a story that's well known, well played out as an option for people who want to get licenses.
See, I'm a little on the fence about that because having those doctors in-house is really handy for people who have old school doctors who don't want to give out prescriptions for marijuana. But at the same time, they had probably no idea about his mental health background, and that's an issue.
Kind of reflects poorly on like our medical system, right? Like you would suspect that someone shouldn't be allowed to diagnose without other previous records. Like how could someone prescribe medicinal marijuana for insomnia for someone with psychosis, right? Like it just seems really, it doesn't follow suit.
I find it disconcerting that we don't know the name of the doctor, the medical facility that he acquired the authorization from, and would question the doctor's ethics. I would question his medical background, and I would question his qualifications.
At the point where he worked his dad's computer store, he became a bit more spiritual. After meeting this one individual who was a computer repair guy that came in one time, and Ben really got involved with these the laws of attraction, and then just Ben started becoming more strange and very spiritual.
Do you think the Reiki has any link to Ben's drug use?
It could, but I think it's more possible that the drug use has him towards the Reiki.
When he started smoking again, it's like the Reiki happened really shortly after that.
Ben's ties to Reiki has increased his drug use?
Yes. Because it's, to be spiritual mindset, you kind of have to be into experimental drugs and whatnot. So it kind of gets into that mentality.
If he kind of opened his mind through this like spiritual guidance, and he thought it would be okay to do more drugs, like definitely I think one thing goes in hand with the other.
But I think there's definitely a strong correlation, like those two.
He kept on like bugging me about it. Like, do you do some psychedelics? I'm like, no, dude, like I'm not comfortable doing that. I'm happy with my life. I don't want to change my point of view right now, so I'm good. Like, I don't want to do it. And he'd keep bugging me about it. So one day he's like, hey, you know what, Peter? I know I've been bugging you. Why didn't you come to the beach? And the night before, me and Miles were at a house party. So I'll call this a luck. Just so the party's so late, I didn't wake up. I go to the beach. And he called me and he's basically sore at me. And fucking called me a bunch of names. He's like, you're not a true friend because you didn't come out.
Well, he was just going to try to get you to do drugs.
And yeah.
At the
So
beach.
basically, it's
That's the
done.
only
The
reason he
next
would
day I
go
get
to
a call
the
from
beach.
Zach. He's like, it's a good thing you didn't come out. Because basically what he's going to do is going to give you a bunch of psychedelics in some form and then get his Reiki master to talk you into their shit.
Like the nerve.
Who'd do that?
That's so,
Tell me,
crazy.
who the fuck would do that?
Like,
after that, I have zero respect for Ben Terry because he's one fucked up idiot.
I remember him doing. He's always talking about it like, oh man, we got to do some mushrooms, and I was always like, no, because he'd always want to do it in like the middle of the week or some really inconvenient time for me. But he just started doing them, and he did them a lot.
But what exactly was this Reiki?
Do you know precisely what Reiki is? If not, what do you think it is?
My understanding of Reiki is the movement of spiritual energy around the human body and using it to heal a person or align their chakras. I mean, that's what I got from the understanding of what Reiki is.
My general idea of Reiki, like, I've never been educated on it, and I've never given much thought about it. I don't care about it. I've never wanted anyone to do Reiki on me. But something to do with connecting some points in your body that will give you energy or happiness.
Yeah, it's the spiritual healing of using hand motion, which is really just you're using your hand to create heat energy, which people feel a sensation on their body.
I believe this is just from it being done on me. It's a way to like channel your energies and kind of like, I don't know, revitalize you.
It's like if you move your hands over the other person, it'll align their chakra and better unlock like their flow of spiritual energy or some type of energy.
There's a girl who I met at university who said she did Reiki on horses, and it was something where you like hold your hands over the horses and can use their energy to heal them.
At first I didn't even know what Reiki was, so I searched it up on Wikipedia, and apparently that's a type of yoga.
It's like something to do with hand. Like you don't actually like really touch the person. It's like your hands are over and you're like energy and that.
Reiki is, as a Buddhist monk described to me, it is the control and manipulation of the energy field of your body.
Energy field thing, and that there's Reiki massage is like an energy field massage where basically somebody doesn't touch you but gets very close to your skin and kind of rearranges your energy flow so that it flows more naturally or better.
Like alternative spiritual healing.
Oh, he's doing all that hand bullshit.
Yeah,
You know,
Reiki is not something.
What the fuck
that-
is Reiki?
If
Who
I have
knows?
kids one day, I don't want them to get any involved with Reiki. Reiki is just garbage, and I want the world to know that.
I don't know exactly what it is. All I understand is it's a belief that you can use your body to help heal or align some kind of energy which you can't visibly see with another person, and that you can help to make people. It just sounds like trying to commit an act of magic sort of thing. It sounds ludicrous, like a lot of spiritual beliefs are in the first place, but in this sense it's like use your hands to try and help someone or heal someone or align something.
I know roughly what Reiki is, and I think I kind of have the same opinion with Reiki that I do other things that are similar to it. The whole idea of balancing your chi through certain movements and thoughts. I think it's honestly, and I hate to say this and sound kind of judgmental, but I think it's a huge fucking waste of time. At least in my opinion.
It's a big fucking waste of time. You get your hand, you move it around, there it is.
I had the pleasure of interviewing a Reiki master in order to find out more about Reiki. But what is Reiki and where did it originate from?
Okay. Well, Reiki is a Japanese system of healing, first and foremost. It's part of a collected body of alternative complementary healing that's called energy medicine, so that we're working with the body's energy field and vibrational field when we're doing Reiki. This divinely guided energy. It's a beautiful little ritual, and in doing so, you are always connected to what we call the Reiki ray, or the vibration of Reiki. If you think of a radio system, especially the old-fashioned radio systems, and how they had all the different stations, and you would access the station by turning a dial, and so you would get onto 104.5 or CBC. Reiki is kind of like that. I mean, our world is a world of vibration. So Reiki is a specific vibration that in the act of the initiation that the Reiki master performs, we tap the person into that dial, so into that specific bandwidth, if you will, and they can forevermore access that on their own.
But the thing he did for me would normally have cost me $1,600 from any other Reiki person.
When he was done, he told me that if I wasn't his friend, the cost of the Reiki that he performed would have amounted to $2,000, and that I was really lucky.
So we're talking about the different fractions in the Reiki world. When Reiki was introduced to the West, it was brought over by a woman named Mrs. Takada, and she led very specific guidelines as to what Reiki was and how you were trained and how much that training cost. And from that group came something called the Reiki Alliance. And then people started questioning whether or not, for example, you really had to pay $10,000 to be a Reiki teacher, if that was what was required when we're talking about Reiki teacher. And so there was a group that split off from that, sort of known as the independent Reiki masters.
His drug use, whether it started before or after spirituality, it exploded after Reiki. And I remember him telling me that the reason he had to smoke so much marijuana was because after he would manipulate people's energies, he would feel mentally and physically like shit and just terrible, and the marijuana helped him overcome those feelings. Do you think Ben's ties to Reiki has changed him as a person?
Yes. That's an honest question.
Do you think Ben's ties to Reiki have changed him as a person?
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
So like when he started doing the Reiki and getting really into it, that's kind of when he became like more withdrawn, and it was like
Kind of changed him a little bit, yeah.
Towards the end there, I couldn't just, it was never just like, hey, how are you? It was just like, are you enlightened yet? Basically is what he'd say to me. So, are you, have you reached your full potential like I have yet?
We do live in a time where we worship our cell phones more than we worship actual gods. So, I would say definitely that Reiki has changed him. Definitely.
My first thought is I want to become clear about the cultist activities he's told me about.
And what has he told you?
Okay, well, I had one discussion with him about 6 months ago. We were talking about it over a beer, and he basically explained to me that in his time with Reiki and how he was progressing with it, he wanted to create he said religion, but religious acceptance with buying into it usually is a cult, which means you have to pay money to get into this order, and whether you're released from it on your own free will is, he didn't really explain that part too well, but I would assume maybe no. I do remember how he explained the hierarchy of how it would operate.
How's that?
Okay, so of course he himself would be the top member, or the top ranking member within it. From there he would have other ranking officials, each with other individuals under him, and that he would eventually get the base personnel at the bottom to pay gratuities, entrance fees, membership fees.
I'd hit him over the head with a Bible and tell him Reiki's stupid. But
Pretty fucking out there.
I think that sounds really cult-like.
But to hear him want to participate in something that sounds like quite a cult, whether or not the intentions of the cult are good or not are to be seen, obviously.
That kind of sounds like a pyramid scheme.
I think it's all a big cult, man.
He used to say a lot of shit like that. I remember him coming to band practice once, and I found my goal. My goal is to save mankind. He believed he was the new Jesus Christ. He believed that.
Yeah, you had people saying he's not the chosen one right there.
Yeah. I'm like, are they gonna fucking? Is it democracy over in that cult? Because I don't give a fuck.
No, he's not the chosen one. He's just another one, like we all are. Believe me, there is a chosen one out there. They're in the mountains in the Himalayas or something, or on a desert island, completely by themselves. They never knew anybody. They're never gonna know anybody. That's the chosen one. The rest of us are just normal human beings, and so is Ben.
Well, Ben's not a god.
But he thinks he's a god.
Sounds vaguely like the plot of Children of the Corn, kind of.
I think that he's on his own quest, and for him to be lucky enough to have a quest, that's awesome. That's cool.
This isn't the Matrix, though. He's not Neo.
I think you gotta be sort of conscious about what you're going into when you join a group.
You gotta be careful, man, because like the mind is a crazy thing, and if you truly get yourself to believe some very certain way of life, then death can become different than what it is for most of us. Which for most of us, death is inevitable, but you try to just live as long as you can comfortably and die, hopefully without even realizing you died, at an old age, and have led a good life, a full life, and have plenty of people who love you and miss you and whatever. But when you start getting a bunch of people to believe a certain thing, you can make death a whole different thing.
It's kind of stupid, but again, maybe I'm completely missing something. Maybe Reiki is like the greatest thing in the world, and I just don't see it.
After a while, everyone had lost contact with Ben. He deleted his Facebook. He changed his phone number or stopped using his phone, I'm not sure. And I thought he'd finally disassociated himself from everyone who has ever shown him affection or friendship in his life.
I just want to find out what he's doing. Like, it's so weird how he went from, hanging out usually at least once a week to just completely dropped off the grid, and haven't heard from him since in any way.
Might have just at the time been on marijuana or something and justified that, wow, I can experience that and I can be high, so that sounds doubly good, And I mean, he said it best himself. When you're doing drugs or when you're believing in some kind of spiritual belief, you're filling a hole. But that hole doesn't just go away. There's a reason it's there. Like, what made it?
Just think that he's not running away from everyone. He is running away from what's inside, and it's common for a person that's in a kind of a crisis of some type to put their problems onto others.
I think he's trying way too hard to figure out what he's supposed to do and what his life means.
Yeah. Where were Ben's parents in all of this? Not just his recent activity, but his whole life.
I've never really thought about the parent side of the issue.
Do you think Ben was ever disciplined?
No. I think he pretty much almost 99% of the time got exactly what he wanted. I mean, we would come to his house, he would have the best guitar, the best TV, the new Xbox or the PS3, right? His parents never seemed to yell at him. I love his parents. They always treated me nice. They always brought us food. In terms of discipline, I mean, I think parents should be there when your son is going around in 7 different fucking coats on him around Broadway performing spiritual magic on people and not going to school, not working.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of just interactions with him with his parents, but I got just a general when I'd be there, just the fact that his parents wouldn't even, if I passed his mom, I'd say hello and she'd say hello, and it was fine. But there was no, and we were young, we were like 15, so that's when your parent is still supposed to come in and be like, hey boys, like how you doing? Like, this is my house. Can I get you anything? Or who the fuck are you? Or get out. But I mean, they were nice enough. And his dad was, they seemed like nice, normal people. But I mean, that's probably the problem. They probably just kind of maybe they're too busy with his sister. Maybe they aren't just that good parents. They kind of just they're well off enough that they can kind of throw money at whatever problem. And but maybe they weren't. Maybe they weren't there for him to just be able to be upfront with. Because yeah, he would hide us from his parents. He would kind of just his parents were more like his landlords in a way. It was kind of weird.
Ben's parents kind of didn't exist when I was around. You never heard about them. They were never at home when we were over there. Never picked him up. Never called him for anything. They're kind of like the Charlie Brown parents. We just never thought about them because they never mentioned.
How do you think his parents deal with him?
I don't think they do. I think they just say, "Oh yeah, just do whatever you want." And
Right, but like they were pretty lenient on him. Like they would like let him get away with stuff like parties and stuff and things breaking in his house. Josh prayed it.
I think he got his way far too much.
just like literally do whatever we want, and we could be as loud as we want, and like that was part of like the problem. I think it's just how ridiculous you could get. It was like what worse things can happen? Oh well, sure enough, a worse thing just happened, and it's okay with the parents.
That he had a commanding presence over his mother and his father.
If you're gonna put it this way, Ben Hunt seems to have a controlling, commanding relationship with them, compared to them having a parental guidance over Ben.
His parents have never like laid down a law, so to speak, with him, and so they've always been kind of pushovers. It seems like maybe that has to do with the fact that like he's their only son, but I think that's pretty ridiculous.
That he never actually saw his parents. They'd show up for like a second, look in through the door, and be like, "Oh, let them out." Like they were like told like they weren't allowed to like be around.
The way he acted to his parents was very. It was very different. I didn't see that parent-child relationship. It seemed very distant and strained, and it felt tense.
Even though I was very close to him, I still don't understand his relationship with his folks, and I don't think I ever will.
His parents are starting to, lack of a better word, give up.
From what I get of the family surrounding, there's not a lot of cooperation in that household, and there seems to be a big focus on the daughter, who is she's training to be a lawyer or a doctor or something like that. There seems to be more focus on that. I do get the feeling that the parents are, in one capacity or another, have given up on him, and I don't like that.
I feel like, yeah, that's the thing I always got. He always kind of like told his mom to bring him this and bring him that, right?
He'd always seemed to be like talking down to her, like giving her orders or something, as opposed to just having a normal conversation.
There's a problem with the mom, because he's mentioned that. He actually straight said it to my face, "Says I got issues with my mom. I don't talk to her," and I'm like, that's not good. You know, the relationship you have with your mother is the relationship you have with every woman in your life. The relationship you have with your father is the relationship you have with every man in your life.
Oh, it was mostly neglect.
Neglect and hate and disownment.
Well, I feel sorry for him. I feel pity, and I don't say that out of maliciousness or to sound big. I genuinely feel like he's trying to make sense of himself and of life, and he's struggling, and he has a condition, and it's not entirely his fault. His parents, I think he has had neglectful parents and has never had that sort of meaningful, parental relationship with his parents. I can just kind of tell that.
There was an academic paper called The Descending Path of Neglect. This paper outlined Ben's relationship with his parents. A quote from this paper reads, "For example, they lavishly bestowed upon him various gadgets and toys in place of real love." In conclusion, it read, "Neglect is like a poison, and its effects on Ben Terry have ultimately made him unbalanced and deficient."
Were you ever told not to speak to his parents or his sister?
Yes, I was. I was told many, many times not to speak to his parents or his sister. I was told not to go anywhere in the house while they were in the house. I was told to go either to his room or the bathroom. That was it. Those are the only two places I was told to go.
And there was just there was a very thick emotional presence there, and it was not healthy. And I would not be surprised if all this anxiety and all these issues that he's had in his past could result in that.
Everything you are stems from how you're raised, so.
Do you think that should be brought to his parents' attention?
Him.
About him?
Anything in general.
He should
I
be
just
brought
think-
to his parents' attention.
Yeah.
Him as an entire
His
whole
parents need to
should
realize
they
that-
should realize he has existed for 23 years.
Yeah, that he's losing all his good friends and that he's going down a path that is kind of depressing.
Do they know that they have a son?
Despite the tragedies on the home front, we only looked at that as an explanation for why all things have led up to this point in time.
Ben works in a type of cyclical phase, or phases, where he will go to one phase, stay in that for a while, go to another phase, stay in that for a while. What caused these changes in phases could be from external sources, or it could just be from himself just waking up one day because he's gone bored of it.
Sure, Ben's full of shifts. That's all he seems to do.
Originally, his focus, when I met him, he got into music and was like super all into music. Like, that's what I want to do, that's what I'm focusing on, that's what I'm gonna talk about with you, like.
Him taking photos of our parties that we always went to, and he'd edit them in black and white and sometimes put like a pop of color into it. I just remember he took really good photos.
When I knew him in his quote-unquote metal phase, this was the opposite. He believed what he wanted to on his own. He didn't care about anyone else. And I've seen this recurring trend from that metal phase to the clean-cut Ben, where social construction was everything. It wasn't believe what you believe on your own, but it was, how can I serve myself in the best way towards this social construction? What will that group think of me?
I don't know, he changes up constantly. He's always changing. Like, he's got, you remember he went through the rocker phase and then, like, just different phases, like, really big into certain, he gets really big into different, like, fads. Like, right now he's into Reiki. In 2 years, he's going to be back and friends with us, and he's going to, like, be totally different.
Well, yeah, it is just a phase. It's another one of his fucking phases.
So the thing about Ben is he's got the ability to become an extremist in his own beliefs in the way that isn't usually harmful. I don't think he's ever been harmful to anyone else in his life, ever. But he's always like, when he's decided something and he's set in that way for about 4 or 5 years, he stays that way. And that's the way it is. He just is decided. With music, he was a big metalhead guy, he had long hair, he had a lot of history with people that he met just like that. And people remember him as that metal guy who, you know, plays guitar and stuff like that. And after a while, that faded away. And
he goes through his transitions of phases. He changes his thing that he does. If he ever comes out of Reiki and tries to do something else, kind of matches our thing, maybe we'll see him or talk to him again.
The guy hasn't committed to anything before in his life to the degree that people usually do. Like, okay, I'm going to become a doctor. So people go and they study 8 years. Even if they didn't want to become a doctor, they finally become a doctor, they stick to something. He's never stuck to anything. Wanted to do music, didn't do it. Wanted to complete high school, I think, but he couldn't do it because of his psychosis at the time.
Every year or 2 years, he seems to reinvent himself into something different to fit his surroundings, and that's what gave me that Charles Manson vibe.
Actually went to music school, but he never finished it. That either. Like, he never finished the whole course. So I don't see what, I don't know, it's just a weird thing. He gives up halfway through it with everything.
I mean, it's like a never-ending story of like things that he feels he can do and then he doesn't do them.
Ben's first phase cycles ran as follows, with a cycle of 4 phases. The first phase being music/metal, phase 2 being partying, phase 3 being photography, phase 4 being video production, with an overtone of music throughout all phases. Possibility of one current phase cycle is as follows. Phase 1 being of spirituality/Reiki, phase 2 is drug use, phase 3 is unknown, and phase 4 is unknown, all with an overtone of spirituality. Possibility 2 is phase 1 is drugs, phase 2 is Reiki, phase 3 is unknown, and phase 4 is unknown, with an overtone of drugs.
So I think that this is just another phase of his. Whether or not it lasts for 10 years or for 2 years or whatever, it's kind of, you know, time will tell. But
We can clearly see Ben had gone through his first phase cycle and on to a new one currently. But what makes him go through all these phases? Ben's thought process and influence level could factor into why he goes through all these phases.
I remember he would always take what I had said and used it word for word with other people.
Like I'll tell him something, right? Let's say I tell him a phrase, like the dumbest phrase, and then he'll find a way to make it better. He'll kind of work on it. Like it's almost like fascinating to watch it because he'll work on it and make it sound good to say to other people.
He would take an idea and make it his own. And that almost, to me, comes back to the childish kind of part, because it felt he took things like too far or to another level.
Yeah, I'd say most of his thoughts came from somewhere else.
Whenever I talked to Ben about things, I kind of felt like it was similar when I was talking to some other people where they had formed an opinion without all of the facts, but they still presented their opinion as if it was backed up with knowledge and statistics and reason, when really it just kind of seemed like an opinion he had picked up and somewhat made his own and decided that this is how he felt.
I think free thinkers are advocates of free thinking, and he picked up on that himself. I don't know that he ever had too many ideas of his own.
I feel like Ben is one of those people that is easily influenced by what's happening in movies, on TV, and what's happening on media. If he reads some sort of an article that's all of a sudden inspires him to make this huge change. So I think most of his ideas came from that. I wouldn't say a lot of his beliefs come from himself within. I think, for example, the Reiki belief, the spiritual thing, it came from that group that he's a part of, right? I'm sure he has like his normal ideas of his own, but he seemed like one of those people that would easily be influenced by media and entertainment industry, you know?
Not more of his... It's not like he was just parroting what other people said, but he'd get like really influenced by something and then just use that as his opinion.
His life, like the thing he does with people is like based on a script that he writes before he leaves home. Most of it at least. Because I've seen him coming to me and my friends and just say the randomest shit, doesn't make sense. Not even part of the conversation. Just because he wants to start the conversation and look good, he's going to start the conversation right at that point.
And make too much of a big thing about being an individual when no one really can be. And as opposed to who he was and what he was interested in comes from other sources, because where else would it come from? I don't feel like he had like extremely unique organic thoughts that he shared with the world. I think that he was a person, and his experiences and what he came across defined who he was just as much as anyone else.
So would you say you're an acquaintance, friend, or good friend of Ben?
I would say I was a good friend of Ben's at one point.
But I don't think that he holds me as a friend.
Would you still consider Ben a friend right now?
No, not anymore.
Would you say you were an acquaintance, friend, or a good friend of Ben's?
It's a good question because I'd like to hear him answer that, right?
Despite the way Ben is, friendship is important nonetheless. Through the eyes of many individuals, friendship is always gauged differently through each individual. You can obviously have an increased status with friendship, but can you lose a friendship past the point of an acquaintance?
I think he doesn't understand fundamentally what friendship entails. He's always had a skewed idea of what friendship is. Even with me, for all the years that we were friends, there was many moments where, you know, like I said before, not a big family, my family and stuff like that. So when an only child doesn't have brothers and sisters, they look outward and make their friends that way. And so friendship for me is a very important thing, right? So Ben was like a brother to me in that way. You can say that as an archetype in my life. He was like an older brother, and I don't think he understood that at all throughout the entire friendship. Like, we were always buddies and hanging out and stuff like that, but I don't think he understood the way that I was treating him was like, you know, I expected him to reciprocate to a certain extent, but he I don't think he ever understood, you know, how important the friendship was to me, because there would be times when he would stop talking to me for 6 to 8 months, and I remember that very clearly, and then just being like, well, this is unexpected, you know, why sort of thing. But ultimately the guy wasn't the best big brother in that sense of archetype. Because
Do you think it should be made aware within his friends group that he decided to disassociate himself from them?
Yeah, everyone's got the right to know.
I think everyone should disown him because he's been kind of a prick towards
Be
everyone.
close friends. He no longer wants to associate with any of them. Do you think this could be viewed as ungrateful towards the people that cared about him, or it's neutral? It's his own decision.
I think it's neutral because some people were really dicks to him, I think, and including myself, I'll admit, like now and again, but
I personally believe that Ben will make the decision that he believes is most beneficial towards himself. Whether that can be construed as a selfish point of view, well, that's up for debate.
I think if you're a weaker person, you'll think it's ungrateful. But if you look at it from his point of view, you'll understand that it's probably just a neutral decision. People that are really kind of ruled by their emotions are going to always put themselves first. Like any little kid, they're not going to really give a shit if it hurts you. It's what's best for them.
It's his own decision for sure, but it's also like the duty of his old friends to understand that it is his decision, and that maybe he's going through a hard time and just needs this right now.
And him doing that is just a big fuck you to my face,
It's like, that's fine. It's more like it's insulting to us.
And you're not treating them right, but
no respect, Scott.
There's no respect around here.
It kind of sucks for the people that call him his close friend, but he's just doing his own thing, right?
I personally think it's neutral. I can see how it can be the other way, because I don't know. I don't. People considered Ben like a close friend, and I can see them being completely offended by it.
Well, I mean, I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I think, based on what little I know, he is quite ungrateful, but I think it's still a decision of his to make.
I wouldn't go as far as saying ungrateful, more of it's just kind of a dick move, like it's his life, he can do whatever he wants, and we can do whatever we want, but to just go like completely cold turkey, like drop off the grid, like last week we're hanging out, it's fine, this week not picking up his phone, his like number's been changed and disconnected, so I don't know, it's more of just like a dick move, just like, why the fuck you doing that?
It's like you have a girlfriend and you break up with her, and then you feel shitty for like a month or two, and then all of a sudden you're fine. And then when Ben stopped contacting me, it wasn't like that. I felt fine. I mean, it sucked that I wasn't, I couldn't be there to hang out with him or do regular things that Nick and Ben do, but I was fine. I stopped giving it a thought after a while, and I just didn't think about it, and now I don't bring it up ever.
I don't know if ungrateful is the right word, because that implies that he owed them something just for being friends with him. I think being hurt and being confused is an appropriate reaction, though.
I think it's his own decision.
Yeah, I think it's his own decision. I don't think ungrateful is the right word. I would accept, because I'm not making it any more of an effort than he is right now or anything. It's not like it's on him. But it would have been nice to just sort of have the balls to just be like, let's make it official. I can't associate myself with you anymore. Why? Well, this and that, and I take a lot of hallucinogens, and I'm enlightened now, so I know that I need to. That means that I need to just not have your negative energy in my life. And I would have thought it was ridiculous, but I would have been like, you know what, you do what you need to do, man, but thanks for letting me know, and I think no less of you, and good luck.
You don't really do that to your friends, just walk away without saying anything and then never talk to them again.
Ben ditched all his friends without really much of an explanation, is what I understand, and these people are hurt and confused, so he's always going to be tied to that for me. That's always going to be something that I relate about Ben to Ben. Like, if somebody brings him up, that is something that I will think about. It's just the fact that he did that and wonder why.
I think think it's harder for the people who knew him really, really well and talked to him all the time and considered him to be a really close friend. To have him just disappear like that with no information, that's really hard, with no closure, and you're worried about him. And I think that worry eventually turns to anger when you find out that he's just somewhere else doing fine and he could have contacted you.
Just like that's why he stopped hanging out with us, just because he doesn't care about any one of us. So it's like, oh, a group of my old friends are making a movie, whatever, fuck them. They don't understand me like my Reiki does.
I'm just saying, if after all the shit that Ben did, and if you still want to be his friend, I feel sorry for you, because you're fighting for a lost cause.
I got invited to a party at my friend's house, Miles Chalmers, and all my friends were there. All of them from high school. I got invited from Nick Kolpakov, and I turned it down because I was with Ben. And Halloween is Ben's favorite day. And I thought to myself, I could not let him be alone on this day. And I was with Max Kendall as well, and we agreed we were not going anywhere and we were going to stay with Ben. He had even bought his own costume for that day, even if he was going to be by himself. So we decided to stay there the whole night with him, and we were having so much fun. We lit off fireworks, we ate candy, and we stayed with him the whole night. I brought this up to him 6 years later, when at one point he said to me, you never really helped me out. And I brought that day up to him because it's very vivid for me. And he told me, quote, dude, I told you, you could go and I didn't care. You could have gone, end quote. And that night, so many years ago, he was extremely happy that I stayed. And now it seems that it was practically nothing.
I think he would really have to reprove himself after all this, because it seems like he's caused a lot of confusion and pain for no reason. Communication is the easiest and most difficult thing in the world. If you can't speak the same language as someone, good luck trying to have like a relationship with them, for example, right? Communication and friendship is paramount. What friendship if you can't talk to each other? Even if it's the end of a friendship, there should be some kind of dialogue, just like, I'm gonna go do this sort of thing. See you later. Something. Because people usually need to have that conversation as a catharsis to make them realize, okay, now this chapter's done. You get to close the book on that part of your life, sort of thing.
Ben has led an extremely interesting and difficult life up to this point, being bullied through his high school career, making close friends, throwing lots of parties, back to drug use, disassociating himself, and now he is on a spiritual quest.
And this is their one chance to say to him, if he ever sees it, how badly he's hurt them. And I get how that would come out in anger. I totally get that.
Ben somehow saw this film. What would you personally like to say to him?
That's an interesting thing to ask too, because I wouldn't know you if I had never met Ben. I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't know Ben. You know, I wouldn't know the group of friends that I hold the closest to me now if I had never met Ben. So I'm thankful. I'm very grateful for having met Ben and having the pleasure of knowing him and hearing his jokes and hanging out with him. But, you know, just if Ben sees this interview of me, to know that he should just, you know, keep on doing what makes him happy, but stay healthy at the same time.
Ben, when you eat a shawarma, like, you gotta, like, just kind of, like, bite it, you know? You can't just, like, pinch your fingers and push up with it. You can't be...
And put himself in the shoes of myself or another that really care for him and be able to look at that.
Perhaps that he should evaluate whether or not what he's doing right now is a mistake. And that I hope that maybe someday he realizes that the way that he did things kind of hurt people and that there was a better way to go about whatever it is he's trying to do.
You still have time, buddy. Just fucking look at your life once again. Because you might think that you're in the right path, and honestly you're not. Just look at your life once again, see where you're going.
Well, if you're happy with your decision, stick with them. Please give me a phone call. My number is 604. I I'll be down to do whatever you want to do. We can smoke some weed even. I don't do that anymore really, but I'd love to hang out with you anytime.
I hope his life is happy and doesn't inconvenience others. So whether he follows up with Reiki and it makes him happy and stable, good for him. If that doesn't work and he needs help, I hope he gets it from family, friends, whoever can help.
Is there anything else you would like to say in regards to Ben, or anything you would like to say personally to Ben if he does see this film?
Well, hopefully, I'm not sure what's going on, but he has to know that all his friends are here for him, and he's going through something. He needs to get help. I've lost a couple students in the past that have committed suicide because they've lost their path, and hopefully his parents are intelligent enough to realize that, and if they're holding him in there, make sure he's getting medical attention that he needs. Also, nothing is that bad that it can't be fixed or repaired. Is what I would say.
I don't know, Ben, I hope you're doing well. I hope, like, that Reiki was, if you like Reiki so much, I hope it's giving you something that I don't really understand, but if it's making you happy, go for it, and please give me my copy of Witcher 2 back. I don't want to have to buy it again.
Ben, the thing about tacos is, if you buy one and you get one free, then you're only paying for one, but they're giving you another one. So, if you only wanted one taco and the one taco was $1.99, then one taco is $1.99. But also they throw in another taco. And so, it's kind of weird is that, like, I guess it's kind of unfortunate for you because if it's $1.99 for a taco but you get two, you'd probably want one taco for 98 cents or whatever. But, like, it's just the world that we live in. You've got to accept the fact that the taco is $1.99, but they give you another one. But, Ben, like, you're going to make it out there, buddy.
Ben, you're a good guy. I've enjoyed having you as a friend. Honestly, I think the Reiki thing's a little bit much. Drugs are always bad for you. Drinking is the way to go. Yeah!
He's a fucking idiot and he's ruining his life and he's gonna end up homeless in at least 20 years after, like, all of his parents' funds disappears. Because they can't work forever, obviously. I mean, who can fucking run a computer repair shop in fucking Kerrisdale and, like, expect to pay off all of his tuitions?
Listen, you disown somebody else, they're gonna disown you. Yeah. You're gonna get the same
same treatment.
Yeah.
What you give, you're getting it back.
Yeah.
You
What
dish
goes
it,
around
you get
comes
it.
around.
Yeah, that's how it is.
I hope you. The only way we'd probably ever become friends again if you secretly admit that you were like in rehab this whole time. That'd be terrible. Obviously, I'd not wish that on anyone. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're not living off your parents and actually have something going for yourself. And you're a nice guy, but you're a hypocrite, and you tend to talk a lot of shit behind people's back. And I guarantee you that's true. So, yeah.
They just hope you're well and happy and healthy and that you're living your life the way you want to be living it.
Well then, you're a fucking freaky person. Don't talk to me, don't stalk me, and I hope to fucking never get my number again.
If you watch this, take your meds.
I hope you're in a good place, Ben, and give me a call. Let's hang out, man. Don't go disappearing on us again.
I don't know. I guess hope you're finding your way, whatever that is.
I would have nothing to say to Ben.
I'm not gonna say you're not on the right path, man. I'm just gonna say, it's too bad that your path, this is a cult attribute. It's too bad that your path, part of your journey, is just to sort of disassociate yourself from your whole past life because you're shamed by it or whatever. Sorry for whatever I did, but I think we both know that, like, I was always myself, and I never bullshitted you. You were the bullshitter. I was the guy who had to just listen to your bullshit and try to want to believe you, but shouldn't have, maybe.
I'm not in Vancouver anymore. I can't really be there for you, Ben. But you know what? You were right to drink that cup of gravy.
That I hope that he's happy. That I've never, ever hated the guy. That he was my best friend for a very long time and for a good reason, because he's a good guy, ultimately. And that as long as he's safe and he's happy and he's not harming anyone or himself or whatever the situation might be, that he's ultimately fulfilling himself, because it seems like he hasn't been able to do that for a long time. And he, everyone deserves that. Even people who have perhaps been avoiding their friends and avoiding their old lives. Everyone deserves to be fulfilled and to be happy. Ultimately, that's what I think he should know.
For Ben. Cheers.
But something carries me faster. Nowhere to run, don't wanna hide. Become what you are. I resign.